1932 was the last year that we held a presidential election in the midst of a truly massive financial crisis. That was the election in which the incumbent Republican president, Herbert Hoover, spent the campaign season dodging rotten fruit and thrown eggs on his way to losing all but 6 states to an upstart Democrat named FDR. There's long been a running argument about whether our current president ought to be considered among the worst presidents in U.S. history, whether he belongs alongside Hoover and other presidential failures like Andrew Johnson and Warren G. Harding, maybe on a horrible little monument made out of, I don't know, a teapot dome or something with bad presidents carved in the side. Anyway, that debate, I think, has now fundamentally changed, as in it's over. Barring yet another disaster of unimaginable scale, we now know that the presidency of George W. Bush will be defined by 4 massive country-changing failures. Disaster 1, the attacks of September 11th, 2001, in which a government that had been warned failed to act on the warnings, and a defense sector larger than the whole rest of the world's defense sectors combined left us undefended. Disaster 2, the as-yet unexplained mendacious launch of the Iraq War, a country we were told to believe had something to do with the as-yet unavenged attacks of 9/11. Disaster 3, the city of New Orleans left to drown while the government's once vibrant disaster response and emergency response sector dithered. And now disaster 4, economic meltdown. We don't really have investment banks anymore. We're borrowing $700 billion, probably mostly from China, to stem off utter collapse. So that's 8 years, 4 crises, each one awful enough on its own to brand any presidency an abject failure. And we got them all done with just one guy. Bargain. Here to try to talk me down is Thomas Frank, the author of the book, The Wrecking Crew, How Conservatives Rule. Thomas Frank, thanks for joining us.
How are you today, Rachel?
I'm antsy, as usual. Do you think I'm right to... do you think I'm right to put this financial disaster in the context of the other major disasters of the Bush legacy?
Yes, you are, but I want to point out that you left out a really bad president in your list. What about Buchanan? James Buchanan.
James Buchanan.
Come on.
He was pretty bad. I left out Nixon, too. I left out Nixon, too, but you're right. It's a good call.
Yeah.
Where do you think this puts the legacy? Sorry, go ahead.
But these things, look, these things are connected. Well, with the exception of 9/11, which I would put somewhere else. But in that they're all a sort of it's Judgment Day for the conservative philosophy of governing. Look, Bush is not personally responsible, or his policies aren't responsible for the inflating of the housing bubble. But conservatism is, with its idea of that let the markets do what they want. The markets will always find equilibrium. The markets can self-regulate. Just leave it up to them. And the other things that you mentioned, like the Homeland Security, which totally failed in the case of Katrina, and the reconstruction of Iraq, which has been a complete disaster. Both of these were cases where they were using Bush's, famous philosophy of privatize, outsource, let the private sector handle the problem. And in all these cases, it failed. And can I keep going?
Well, you could, but let me ask you about where I think you're going with this, which is that this is a problem of conservatism. This is a problem of letting people run government when they believe that government can't work and ought not work. And what I wonder is whether or not Democrats are going to get off the Reagan-esque conservative trip they've been on since Clinton and stop following Republicans' lead on this.
I certainly hope they are. And there's another thing to add, and that is their constant war on federal workers, on federal employees. While they're outsourcing everything to the private sector, because of course, the private sector does everything better than public workers. They're constantly bad-mouthing public workers, doing pay freezes, treating them poorly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Get it all out to the private sector. They'll do it. They'll do the job, Rachel.
Do you see this debate reflected in the presidential campaign, or is it policy to policy, soundbite to soundbite, and we're not getting at these philosophical issues?
No, they haven't got at them yet, but they're being forced to by the collapse on Wall Street, by the complete breakdown, and this is due to the complete lack of oversight of a huge part of the of the financial industry. I mean, if somebody can tell me what a credit default swap is, we can start talking about how to go about regulating it. They're going to crucify mankind on a cross of credit default swaps. We don't even know what they are.
Thomas Frank, author of the book The Wrecking Crew. Thank you for trying utterly unsuccessfully to talk me down. I appreciate it.